All right, guys. I'm back again. This is going to be my take on the Outlaws rifle version, kind of what they did with, I guess you'd call it a spin off of the Mandalorian's rifle. Um, they took the stock off of it, shortened it, put a different scope and stuff on it, but we'll go ahead and get into the build of it. First off, this is the glue that I use. It's a CA glue. Um, it's like a thick super glue that's slow setting, and it's got a spray activator that once you put glue and put your parts together, hit it with the activator, and locks it in place. You can use thick super glue, but especially on this later in the video, I'll explain to you like one of the things putting inside the metal tube for the rifle. You have to be really careful about using just regular super glue because it starts setting up so quick, and trying to slide all the parts together before, get enough glue everywhere and then slide it together before everything starts setting up and your parts lock in place where you don't want it to lock in place. Uh, excuse me. But any CA glue will work. This is CA glue I've been using for 2 or 3 years. This CA glue I actually now carry on my website. So if you need some, you can go there and get it. This is the size that you get. If you'll notice right there, this bottle is now put together probably 3 or 4 different kits so far. So there's quite a bit in it. Lasts good long time. This is the activator for it, and let's go ahead and get the kit out here. This is the way it comes with the barrel, the metal barrel tube. Let's go ahead and get open up here. That's loud. All right. There's part of our fork. Now this one is just like my Mandalorian rifle. It still has all the passages for electronics if you want to put electronics in it. It still has the little door compartments for battery, wiring path that goes all the way to the end of the barrel. It's got a little wiring path that passes through all the parts to come out to where if you want to put an LED down into the fork, and electronics, comes all the way through here. Here's one of the door compartments that screws on, where your wiring will come through the barrel, and then it comes into this entire, there's a whole passage here. This panel will screw on and off the bottom, so you got quite a big cavity in here for electronics if you want it. When you get back in here to the stock where the trigger guard and stuff goes, there's a recess that I put in here for a micro switch, and I'll put a link in the video description of what type of micro switch it is, so that if you want to, you can put a micro switch on the trigger and wire up to where, like, pulling the trigger will turn on and off the LED that if you want to put it in there. The scope is hollow. It does come with the scope lenses that we're going to be putting in. The underbarrel tube, just like on my Mandalorian rifle, it's a solid aluminum tube, so yours won't come with a big gouge mark in it. And it will also still have the spring-loaded pop-up chamber like a Mando rifle did. What I noticed on this Outlaws, and of course, you're talking video game and stuff. Let me pop the cylinder off of here. This is the way I'll ship it, and it helps protect the arms on that, but they just pull out and you take the chamber off. What I noticed in the game is they had changed the scope from being on the left-hand side to the right-hand side. The first mount they put on here, which is fine. The second mount, graphically, they actually had attached to this, so it removed the pop-up ability of the chamber, which I wanted to maintain that. So what I did is our cover guards that go on the sides here, if I hold my tongue just right and get that on there, the cover guard actually carries the other mount. So the chamber still pops up and down without interference and without problem. So, but let's get all our parts out here. This is going to be our fork mount, which is the back of our fork there. Our grip, the pommel part of the grip, if you want to call it that. It does also have the indentation for the logo and stuff on there. Let's just dump all this out. These are our battery doors, or our electronic doors. Once we have it all glued together, you'll see how these will pop down in the front locks, and you can screw that down. This is the front one. Does the same thing, goes in here, screws down so you can take them back apart. Excuse me. This is our other side cover, so left and right side cover. These are our two front fork parts here, and we'll go through all getting those cleaned up and get those put on. We have our trigger. We have our two little side stops that go on the body. This is our little magical mount that goes into the bottom that allows us to mount our trigger guard on, allows the spring action to all work. This is the little slide piece that pulls back. It actually sets in here, and that's what holds the chamber closed. If you notice, these parts line up with there, and when you pull this back, the chamber pops up. Our trigger guard, our two orange tips, and this is our little charge cartridge that goes in there. So we're going to set all that to the side here. I'm feeling kind of crappy today, so just bear with me here. Let me get some water. Try not to keep clearing my throat. We had really unprecedented cold weather here. We had snow here, and we haven't had snow in, other than a little sleet here or there, in like 15 years or some crazy crap. So these two guys are our lenses. They have a protective cover. You just peel off of both sides. We have two magnets, and the magnet will be for our chamber release. So you pull back, chamber pops up, you let go, the magnet slaps it back forward again. Let me set these little bags out to the side. And we have a host of little screws, and we have a couple springs here. One spring will be for the chamber pop-up, that will pop the chamber up. The other one will be for our trigger. So we'll set those off to the side. This one, I still include the eye bolt like I do on the Mando rifle kit. It's a big old thick normal rifle sling bolt that will get screwed into the side here. And this will allow you to sling this. And just like my Mando rifle one, I put this in there. You can sling your rifle without a problem. We have a bunch of various different screws in here, and we have 4 of these flat blade screws, M4s. We have a M3 20 millimeter long socket head. We have 2 10 millimeter long socket heads. We have a 16 millimeter long set screw. It's not missing the head. If you look in the end, it's got a place for an Allen wrench to go, and that's how you screw in set screws. So set that off to the side. We have 2 little M3 6 millimeter flat blades. Those will hold our rear cover that goes on here. That's what holds that on. And then we have 4 of these M3 6 millimeter button heads. what we'll do is we'll go ahead and we'll just we'll go and build this in sections and then do the final assemble. We'll go ahead and get our the front fork out here and the fork tips. Now what you may need to go around, take your little file or even one of these dudes. This is a PVC pipe reamer. They also have for metalworking versions too. You can get them at Home Depot or wherever. I don't suggest I like the really cheap Home Depot plastic ones because they actually grab this and it keeps it from flopping so much. So when you go to do this, that's why this one's in here. My good ones are out in the shop. But you'll want to go around and, well, not put it on upside down, but put our fork together, make sure that it fits. And see what I mean by like that? There's a little lip in there. So you can just take a file and file the edge or a razor blade. I don't do razor blades because me and razor blades don't get along sometimes, especially when they slip off and hit my thumb or my finger. I drink too much coffee for that. Okay. Get everything together. So we're going to glue our fork ends on, and that will end up being our fork. A little snug fit, so we're going to pull that off. So let me get in here, and hopefully my glue's not dried up. I don't think it is. I'm going to go ahead, and on this, since this is a seam that you want to disappear, let me glue this and get all this together, and then I'll explain what I'm doing on the other fork. If you have any seepage, that's fine, just wipe it off. And then spray with activator, knock your glue over, make a mess. Now you're model building. Okay. So anyways, what I did was I got glue all around this post, but I also made sure to get glue on the mating surface. That way when it's glued together, you effectively fuse this seam together so that when you go back and sand and all that stuff and paint, if you were to break this, which is pretty hard to break, but if you were to break this, it's going to break anywhere but there if you have it glued correctly. The mating surface is so important because, and again, you don't want to go just gobbing the heck out of it, but you also don't care if it squishes out because this is something that you do before paint. So I got a little squish there. I'm just going to go around my edge, and I'm going to hit that with a little activator. All right, so there's our fork. And now that it's together, I could prime all this and then go back and quickly sand, and pretty much the seam just disappears quite easy. And again, I've said this 100 times. I do plan on making some videos on how to paint the easy way, not all the weird ways that you see online where people are taking like not epoxy but hardening agent and rubbing all over it, or sanding the crap directly out of the plastic. That's the thing. If you start with a good enough kit that's not all jacked up and has really bad layer lines, if you have nice smooth layer lines, I've never really sanded the plastic. I use the filler primer and do a quick coat and then go back and, because the thing about the filler primer, when you sand it, the filler primer, it sands off real easy, but the filler primer stays behind in the inside the little micro lines, so that where you have layers, the outside edge of it, it fills in those little micro lines. So you do a filler primer, lightly sand real quick, and that second little dusting coat of filler primer, you'll notice that basically every line disappears. Now, if you have like a defect, or say like right here on this seam, if you have a lip that sticks out, you can sand at that lip right in that area, or file at that lip to get it the same height as the rest if it's raised a little bit. But once you have that out, when you filler primer, even though like right here there's a little raise, I wouldn't sand it that yet. I would filler primer it and then start sanding. That gives you a very good visual representation of where to sand and not to sand, or where you need to sand more or whatever. So now we're going to go ahead and put our fork mount on. If you notice down in here, there's a circle and a square. There's a circle and a square here. The reason we want to line those up is because that is our wire passage. And I know it, well, it's hard to see down in there, but anyways, it allows you to pass a wire past the screw that we're going to put in here. And the screw we're going to put in here is, you're going to need this big 45 millimeter screw. And we're going to drop that down in there. And then we're going to take this dude and we are going to, this is a long thread, so just take your time. And the reason it's a long thread is I wanted it to bite in and increase the strength of this joint big time. You can go ahead and glue this in and then screw it in. I haven't found a need to glue, because once you get this screw in, it's not going to work itself loose. Because as we're screwing in, and this is a very tight screw, but it's cutting threads as I'm going in. Don't use a power drill or something, because high speeds creates high friction. I mean, I'm creating a crap ton of heat right now in these threads at this speed. If you use a drill, all you're going to do is increase the heat so much it's going to stop pulling the screw down in there and just start spinning and melt the crap out of it. And that's with ABS or anything, just because, you know, you can generate, you know, 300-400 degrees worth of heat off of friction, off of screwing things together. And we're almost there. And there we go. So the fork is together, fork mount. That's all there is to this. And what you can do if you want to is pass you a string down through here and have it come out here and just tie it off to your fork or something. And as you assemble, this piece will go in here, but this metal barrel liner it will be inside of here too. You can have the string hanging out, feed it through the metal barrel liner as we go, and as we glue all this together. That way you end up with a string, and it makes it much easier to like pull wire down through here. The barrel, not so much as a difficulty, but you know, you have a small passage to get a couple wires through to go to an LED if you are going to put electronics in. So we're going to set this off to the side right now. And what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and get our grip. We're going to go ahead and take our little, like the pommel end of our grip here. And what I do is when I put glue, I just go on the edge, the 45 degree on the inside. That way you get a little bit squished to the face and you get a little bit squished down the wall. And you can put a little across there if you want to. And on this, I'm just going to go ahead and spray and just stick it together and hold it. Do a little wiggle. If you put two parts together and kind of wiggle them, it squishes the glue around in there really good. All right, so that's good and permanent. All right. Oh. Feel like my head weighs 40 pounds right now. Not sick, just this weather's got my head all just jacked up. Okay, so next thing we're going to do is let's set this to the side, and if you see the circle down in there, And this part has a circle as well. We'll go ahead and get this out of the way. And this is one of the more important things that I tried to get across to people. The proper way to put your magnets in so they attract one another. I leave them stuck together, and I take a marker and I mark both sides. And whatever color marker you use, red, green, black, whatever, I just have to keep mentioning in my head, like, this is black, so black to the back, you know. We're going to put some glue in here. If you notice, that's there. Once you glue this in and take this magnet away, you know that this magnet needs to get glued in, the leftover magnet, with the black facing inside first. And that way you keep up with the orientation of your magnets. So let me go see if there's anything with this hole that I need to change. No, not really. So, and I'll show you know another. There is a little thing I need to clean out here. Another thing about the orientation, and with this, don't be overly stingy, but don't be like where you're going to make just a huge mess. On something like this, you can leave the magnets together, and then I just slide one magnet off to the side and then press that magnet in. And you might have some squishing, which I didn't, believe it or not. We're going to let that set. See, now we have this magnet off to itself, and we know the correct polarity to make it work with this because we have a black mark on there. So what I do is I take a screwdriver, stick it to the opposite side, okay? And now, especially with a magnet that's down in a recess like this, I can take this magnet and put it directly in the hole without trying to fiddle with it and have it flip over or any of that crazy stuff. So I'm going to take my glue and I put a glob down in there. And now I'm just going to take my screwdriver and I'm just going to stick this down in the hole and then, well, I was going to say I'm going to take my screwdriver, stick it down in the hole, and pull it off to the side. But I pushed down so hard, I flipped my magnet out at the same time. So there you go. So we're going to let that dry or cure or whatever. It's crazy the comments that people take out of their day to actually like bother to leave. That's not drying, that's curing. That's not a two-part glue, that's one glue with an activator. It's like, it's the actually kids, as I call them, actually. So now we have this part, and if you stick it in there, you see, I mean, it's auto wants to set where it's supposed to. So we're good there. This part, circle, and it's got one side's a circle and one side's the little triangle-y looking piece. If you look down in here, it's triangle walls. Excuse me. This is going to be the piece that this rides on, like this. And that's what you're going for. So what you're going to want to do is take the circle upper part, and it should just drop in there without issue. Then what we do is this little part right here gets screwed in just like this. So what we're going to want to do is we need our two 10mm socket heads. These dudes right here. And I need to find my appropriate bits real quick. I was assembling something. Oh, I was tearing apart a resin printer last night out here and getting it fixed. So I have all my bits messed up. I normally have the three that are the most common. So we're just going to put that dude in there. We're just going to screw that. So it goes in and stops. I'm going to take this dude, do the same thing. And they screw in quite easy. I mean, you can definitely feel that we're cutting threads in here. Nice, and you can tighten them down nice and tight. Now what we want to check, now if you pull one side it doesn't move smoothly, because when you have the rifle up and the chamber's locked down, you reach over and you do that number and the chamber will pop. As a matter of fact, if we want to, we can go ahead and take one of our springs. If you look on the bottom of the chamber, there's a spring there, and if you notice there's a hole there, you want to go ahead and test fit your spring and make sure there's nothing in the way. Do the same there. So basically what we're going to do is we are going to spread our little arms and put it down into the hole there. Now I've got to pull mine back apart because you can't pull it out here and put it together as much. What you want to do is set it to where your spring's in there. Hold your mouth just right. There we go. I say there we go. Come on, spring. All right, there we go. Both are in there. All right, hold on a second. Dadgummit. All right. Ruga, when you're putting it in, you have to come back far enough to make sure that your edge is clear right here. I'm actually glad I did that so I could show y'all so you don't do what I did, I'm trying to hold this so you guys can see what I'm doing, and then I'm trying to, there we go. So, and what you'll kind of fight with is this is wanting to grab on these forward pipes. So if you just spread this out and pull it back just a little bit, I promise you it's not this hard. It's hard when I'm trying to hold it there. I'm just not going to worry about showing you guys at the moment. But that's what we're looking for. And the first couple times you do this, you'll want to pull that back. Because what you'll do is you'll end up wearing the corners off of that right there. Now hold this because these are going to pop out if you don't hold this. But that's the chamber action right there. So that's what ends up happening. Works perfect. And that's the same way my Mando rifle kit is. You pull them back and you're good to go. All right. So since we're at this point, we can go ahead and put our little side pieces on. Now, if you see the shapes of them, there's two of them. You want them to where they go forward over the round part here. Now, remember, once you put these in, you can't take the chamber back off. So this is going to be one of these things you'll want to have the receiver painted, the chamber painted, and your little parts painted. And then go, now this you could take back apart after you get the magnets in place and you make sure that it all functions correctly. You can take the two screws back out, paint those separately, put everything back together. But once you put these on, you're not taking the chamber back out. So I'm going to go ahead and get me a little bit of glue here. And I'm just going to put this around the, you notice I just put it around the edge right there. And I'm going to go ahead and spray my part, stick it in there and wait. And the reason I put it around the edge is I didn't want to put it on here and get any on top and risk it squishing up and catching my chamber. If you do happen to do that, there's enough flex in here that you could go in here and kind of pop your arm loose from this part if you happen to get glue in there. But now that that's set, I'm going to hold this side, make sure it all still functions the way it should. Now, let me grab my other side here, and I'm going to do the same thing. First, I'm going to put it on, fit it, make sure everything looks good. I'm going to go right around the high top edge here. I'm going to spray that, drop that down in there, let it set for a minute. Okay. So now that we got that together, we can pull our chamber. Good to go. Now, while we're also here, I'm going to go ahead and install this side bolt, okay? What you're going to want to do is find something that can slide through, which that cannot. Let me see. That's good enough. But it's easier to find like a long, like a piece of coat hanger or something. The reason being is because there's really, I mean, you can grab a hold both sides of this because there's a flattened side on this, but it's easier to get it started and take something and you kind of hold your mouth just right and get, as soon as it starts biting in and you know it's going straight, screw this dude all the way in. Here, let me change the way I'm holding this. And it's kind of a tough screw at first. But what you'll want to do is, like, you don't want to go and go, just get it to where it stops. Because depending on like how you want this to hang off your sling and the opposite sling part you're going to use, see, like Michael with Fan Fiction Props, he makes the Mandalorian set that goes with the Mando rifle, and he has the lock part that goes with these eye bolts on his Mando set. And I'm pretty sure that he's making like the bandolier piece or whatever, or a sling for this Outlaws. So if you get that from him, it'll have the matching piece that goes on there. See, here is, no, I can't get it all in video or whatever, but this is the original rifle that I built on stream. God, what is it now? 5-6 years ago, 5.5 years ago. But so it's got the same bolt holder in there, so, or the sling bolt. Make sure it doesn't slide over down the wall there. Okay, so the next part we need to look at is we're going to deal with our grip here, and we need our trigger piece, our trigger guard, our trigger, and our spring. Now, you notice there's a hole back here, and there's a hole in the trigger, okay? What's going to happen is we're going to mount this in here, and the spring is going to be down below the trigger, below this lip right here. The reason there's this lip is because what I was explaining before is there's a place to mount brain work please, a switch down in there where the switch faces downward. So when you pull this trigger, that lever comes up and can hit the switch. So let me find my bit for my set screw. Is that the correct bit? It is. Okay. So a little bit set I'm using, by the way, is like this little cheap bit set from Harbor Freight. It's like this, like $10. I've got them set. I have them sitting around everywhere just because I'm working here in my studio, out in my shop. Basically, anywhere I stop for 5 seconds, I end up doing something. But what you're going to want to do is just put it to the hole, do like a half a twist. We're looking to make sure it's 90 degrees to the body. Then we turn it and make sure that it's 90 degrees to the body this way, and look back again. And all we're doing is trying to get in a couple turns, and then we just go from there. And we just get to screwing. All right, now you screw it out to where it just kind of stops but doesn't get in the way. See the best way to do this here. Kind of stick the spring in the back hole there, stick your trigger down in there, and line that up, and kind of just pull it back, and hold your tongue just right, and there we go. And you could probably put it in from the bottom as well. Now I am going to, you notice the hole for the spring or the triggers right there. So I'm going to go ahead and screw this out to where I can see what I'm doing. Like I'm getting close to the hole. If you miss the hole, you'll feel this getting tight. Don't, just keep going. Back up a little bit and push down and realign. And we're in the hole now. And keep going. And if you started this set screw straight on this side, you'll go straight over and you're going to hit this other side without a problem. So we're going to go in 2 or 3 turns. We want it recessed in there, but don't go too far because it gets recessed in there. And this is what we're looking for. Boop, 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 boop. That's it. Okay. So this is the assembly that we're looking for here. What we're going to do, let me get my stomach out of the way. If you put this on first, you're going to have a really hard time getting the trigger back down in here. If you are wanting to make it to where you can unscrew and remove the trigger assembly, what you're going to want to do, because this is going to get glued on, okay? The whole grip gets glued on here. Now you can go in here and you can trim the corners off of this here, and what that will do is allow you to put this in like this and pop this down in here. The only reason that I don't have it that way is because that is this all being on here at, like, if we were to screw this on, glue this in here, all of this gets glued, and that makes all of this really strong. If you make this removable, which you can, like I said, you trim your corners here so that you can pop this in and then screw this down. All we're going to have as far as gluing here is all the glue that we're going to put in here and on our face when we put this together. So not that this is like the other rifle where we have a huge stock sticking out the side and it's a big, huge, long barrel. But just make a note of that, because what I'm going to do is we are going to stick this on here. I'm going to take this 20 millimeter, and pretty much the reason, again, that this 20 millimeter is here is for those of you that choose to have your trigger assembly removable. For me, pretty much, I mean, you'll probably want to do that if you're going to put electronics in and you worry about needing to get back and forth to your switch for your trigger. I mean, to be honest with you, one of those micro switches will probably outlast the number of times you're ever going to pull this trigger. But, you know, if you're sitting around with this all the time in your hand and you're constantly pulling the trigger, I guess there's a way for you to wear that out. Not really sure. But what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and glue our trigger guard in real quick. So we're going to put us a dab in here. Come off, please. Thank you. We're just going to put a little dab on this front wall. So on the front wall right there and on the back wall. And we're going to take this dude and we're going to stick it in there. Hold some pressure down and not miss the part when we spray, because I just did a hell of a job just then and missed it twice. And there we go. All right. So before we put our grip on, just for ease of working with stuff here, what we're going to do first is we've got to glue this dude on. And so what we need to do is we need to pay attention to where, like, we do and don't need to get glue. Get that off of there. In reality, what we need to do here is we need to just put glue around this outside wall right here. And that will be more than sufficient, because once that sets, the next step we're going to go through here is we are going to put our rod in. And our rod has a stop that goes down in there. And, well, there we go. I'm pointing directly for the camera. I'm blurring it out. And then we're going to put the next section, then the next section. We're going to work our way up. And then we're getting to the section that I was talking about not using just regular thick super glue and use a CA glue, because thick super glue, as soon as you start putting that stuff on, it starts setting, and you got to be pretty careful about that, because you're going to end up screwing yourself. So I'm just going to go in and put a nice thick bead around here. We don't want to put any on the mating face because we don't want any squishing into the hole for the rod. So now I'm going to push it together, and I'm just holding pressure right now. We're going to let that set up. And what our rod does is, once we put this together, I'm going to actually put this in here and make sure I don't have any glue on here anywhere from that. Okay. This metal barrel rod ends up tying this piece to this piece to the next piece to the next piece. So it all becomes nice and solid and very rigid part. So on here, what we're going to want to do is we don't want to put glue on the rod and slide it down in there, because all you're going to do is wipe the glue up the rod and you'll have a puddle setting here. What we're going to want to do is take our glue, and not in here on the octagon shape, but we're just going to want to pour glue all around the circle edge in here. That way, when we slide this in, the glue wipes along this and we'll slide it in and spin it at the same time, and it gets set down in there, and we're good to go. So this is, and again, don't get it in your octagon part, because we have another part. We have the front foregrip part that's got to get glued in there. So, and the reason we're doing this in stages, putting that in there, then putting this on and all that, the reason we're doing it in stages is if we were to build this whole thing out and then slide this barrel in there, there's no way you're going to get enough glue to where by the time the barrel slides all the way through, you're getting glue all the way down in here. So if we build it in sections, we can guarantee. So I'm going to have to hold this away from the camera so I can do this, but you're going to want to take your tip and just hold it against the wall of the circle and just spin it until you get a good, nice bead all the way around. And this is one of these things you don't want to be scared of. So I've got my bead in there. I'm going to take my rod and I'm going to twist it. And it's already sitting in there, but I'm twisting back and forth because I want it to squish around in there really well. Now I'm going to take some activator and I'm going to spray in there to get it to go ahead and activate. All right. So now, real quick, this is already drying, but there's a lot of glue in there I'm letting activate. And plus, I just sprayed activator on here. If I was to go ahead and start trying to put glue on here to glue this on, that glue is going to instantly start setting because there's still activator here. So if you just give it a minute and let it, you know, breathe, I guess is a good point of that. Go ahead and slide that together. Make sure everything's nice and the way it should be. If you notice, our barrel stops right here, which is exactly what we want, because that makes this octagon out here completely adhered to the metal barrel, so that when we end up gluing the fork on, now the fork that has the big screw in it that makes this all nice and rigid and thick is all nice and rigid and thick here. Once we glue that together, we're doing good. So now on this, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take glue and put all, actually, yes, I had to think about that, because on the rifle, we had to do it a little bit different, because this barrel rod goes way out and we actually end up sliding 2 or 3 pieces down the rod. So if I was to put glue in here on the rifle and slide it, it would smear glue all along my rod, which is not what I'd want to do. On the rifle, I would see where I want the glue to start and stop, and I would put glue, like globs of it, like just right here. So when I slide this on, it smears the glue along the pipe, but it doesn't smear it out here you know, past that half. But on this one, our inner barrel stops right at the end, so we're good there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a nice healthy bead around the inside of the circle, and then I'm going to put a little bead on the outside of this real quick. Make sure all that activator is nice and dried. I'm just going to spin that dude, put a nice thick bead, come around this edge. I'm going to take this guy right here. I'm going to kind of spin it back and forth, and I'm going to put it right on there. And mine pretty much started, sorry about that, started setting instantly because there was still activator setting down in there. You just want to make sure that you have this aligned. It has a little twist in it, but so that your underbarrel rod goes down in here. Goes down in this hole. There we go. Now I'm not going to leave this yet. I'm going to pull this back out in a second. But while I'm here and we're waiting for that to dry and set up, and now we're already to a really good hefty filling kit here now. All right, so I'm gonna let that set for a second and pull my rod back out. Can't get a grip on it right there. Gotta be careful, don't break our rings off or anything. Let me set this back down in here. What I want to do is I'm going to push that down in the hole. And of course, before you assemble this stuff, you're going to want to make sure that your rod goes down into the body hole without any resistance. So, you know, you've already painted this, you'll paint your rod, you know, so you just want to make sure that with your paint, and of course, it's easier to put more paint on than it is to take a bunch of paint off. My dog is stuck in here somehow, and I'm not quite sure how she did that. But anyways, you'll just want to make sure that everything slides together good before you do a final assembly. And just like this, I want to take this, and I want to make sure that my aluminum rod goes in here just fine. And it does. It slides down in there perfectly fine. And you'll notice when you get your kit, the end of this will look like it's filed. I normally will go through and file this end for you 99.9% of the time. Forgive me if I didn't, but I will file that because most of the time I will check and make sure that everything is, you know, slip fit real good. So now what we're going to want to do is I'm going to put glue around the octagon here and on the face of this. But before I do that, I am going to put just a little bit of glue down in here. That's if you don't want to, because it's such a tight fit, that's fine. This rod is not so much structural as it is just because it's part of the kit, and it's much nicer to have a nice, smooth, thin part, not printed. I mean, I could print this part and it'd be nice and thin, but it would be weak because you're always going to be carrying here and squeezing and moving. And if there's an air gap on something that's thin printed like that, you have a chance of cracking it. That's why I do these things like this. That's why I did it on the Mando rifle. So I'm not even going to worry about it at the moment. I'm just going to stick that down in there, make sure we're good to go. And what I'm going to do, like I just said, is, and actually I'll do it on here, because if you do it here and you slide it together, you'll squish it out and maybe have some overflow. And if you've already painted, just go around this inside upper edge of the octagon and then put your little dab of glue right there in the hole and you should be fine. So I'm going to go around the octagon. And then I'm going to put a dab of glue. And that's about all I've got. And then I'm going to take this dude and I'm going to slide it together, holding one end against my belly. And then I'm pulling. And I'm just going to hold some pressure for a minute. And there we go. All right, so this is where we're at right now. And now I've got to make some room here because I've made this way, way longer. All right. All right, now our side covers. Now you can put the side covers on first if you want to, but there's there's a gap in here, and that's what this is for once you put this all together so you don't end up scratching up your side covers. You can have all this assembled, and then you can simply take your side covers, put some glue down in there, and pop them in. Now you can put them on before you put this front piece on if you want to. It's just when I'm going through and making a kit, I try my best to think about painting and stuff, about how this is going to go together once the parts are painted. Like, are you going to glue these two parts together, then paint them? Or are you going to paint these parts separate and then put them together? I try to make the gapping to where that's a physical possibility. So just keep that in mind. So I am going to go ahead and put some glue down in my channel. I'm going to hold my belly just right and pop my part in there. Sorry, hopefully y'all saw it on this camera. It's just sometimes your belly is your best third hand. And I'm going to let that set for a minute. And then I'm going to go down this side and I'm going to put just a dab of glue down this side. Makes it so much harder to work with it now that I've put the fork on there, but you know, whatever. And make sure we're in there and pop that in there. And see, that's the thing is, like, yeah, you'll scratch the paint of this on the area that goes back behind there. So they're like, I would rather scratch the part popping it in where you're not going to see than to be sitting here with my nicely painted, especially since you'll end up painting these emblems and stuff on the side a different color and scratching that up. Because once you get to this point and it's nice and long, now you're trying to be, delicate and not, jack your paint job up. What we can go ahead and do is we'll go ahead and put our bottom doors on. We'll slide that in there and see it just pops in. And once this is assembled, you can take the screws back out and pull your door out and get to everything you want to down in there. Just pop those back on. And these are the button heads. And let me find the end that I use for the button heads. Is that it? I think that's it. And of course, you can already do a pre-assembly and cut these threads. Okay. We're going to put our other one in real quick. And see, if I had this painted, I would actually just end up wrapping. And that's another thing you can do. If you've painted and you're now doing this assemble, like I would go ahead and just wrap this with a cloth and put some like blue tape around it, hold it in place so I don't scratch stuff up. Because there's nothing that pisses me off more than you take your time to paint something. And yeah, I clear coat over everything because the clear coat is going to give you a nice protection. But there's still nothing that pisses you off more than you spend time to paint something and make it all nice and perfect in your eyes, and you turn around and you scratch the piss out of it. Get that boogie out of the way. Then we're going to just take our other little door and drop it in. And I thought about changing these doors, but everybody loved the electronic access on this kit so much from the Mando rifle that I was like, screw it, I'm going to leave these. Because look, it never hurts to have the option if you want to put electronics in or not. And see, that's the thing, you know, I was talking about putting the string down through here and feeding it through as you put the tube in. Well, I guess I could have showed you before I put the doors on, but if you had that string hanging out the bottom of the fork, you could have fed it in the inside of the big barrel and dropped it, and it would literally drop all the way down through here. There's that passage all the way through here, through this battery this electronic compartment, all the way through the body to this electronic compartment, all the way to the trigger, all the way into where the switch for the trigger and stuff goes. So, and before I put this grip on, because if you notice, if I put the grip on, we'd be up here like this. We need to go ahead and work on our scope. All right, we'll move on to the scope now. Most of you all will notice there's an edit in the video right there, and I've kind of jumped forward in this part, and then after this part, it'll go back to normal. The reason being is because as I was assembling the scope, I realized that I changed one thing, because this side panel right here holds one of the mounts for the scope, and it can be moved back and forth just a little bit to make everyone's life easier, including mine. Y'all don't get to see my struggle on that one. Just so you're not trying to struggle putting these 4 screws in, which it's these 4 screws, the 4 bigger ones. What I did was, this scope mount used to be part of the scope up front, and you would glue it together this way. I made this scope mount separate, one, so that you could compensate if you put this panel on and you have it slid all the way back. And when I say it can go either, you know, forward or back a little bit, I'm talking about a 1/2 millimeter. But a 1/2 millimeter is enough to make you struggle and cuss me and everything else, because I was cussing myself. So that's the cool part about, is I can go back and make changes to this on the fly. So if you notice, there's a notch down in here, and there's a notch right here, or there's an indentation right there, and a little tab, or would that be a notch and that's a tab, whatever. Square thing goes in square hole. Let me get the little boogies out of the way here. So if you know, they go in, and all that's to do is that's to help you. Originally, that was there to, when you glued it together, it made sure your scope rings were in alignment. So it's not absolutely necessary there now, but it does help you still line it up nicely, and it still helps you put the seam downward. Of course, when you prime this, paint this, and stuff like that, that seam will be gone. So What we're going to go ahead and do is I'm going to go ahead and glue this together real quick. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to take a bead of glue. I almost said paint for some reason. My brain is on the mode of painting at the moment for some reason. Let's get this all put in here where it's supposed to be. Get our scope, line our little notch up. I'm just going to hold this on the table, spray it, kind of turn it while I'm looking down on it. You know, make sure we're straight. We should be perfectly straight though. Let that set up for a minute. Okay, so we're good to go there. So before we put this on, we're going to go ahead and deal with the lenses real quick. And with the lenses, let me find my little razor blade here because I'm sure I don't have any fingernails enough to. This is paper. It's a sticky paper on both sides of these lenses. So when I laser cut these lenses for you guys, it's a protective coating. And all you got to do is just get it started. And it's stuck on there pretty good. My dog is over there peering into a toy. We can get that one peeled off. Here, let me just see if I can. Get that one peeled off. So you peel it off, and that's what you end up with. Completely clear lens. I'm going to peel this one over here. Well, I say I'm going to peel this one. What it is, you just have to hold your tongue just right. That's the key to everything, is holding your tongue just right. All right, so there we go. We got our papers peeled off. Now, on these lenses, you could go in and put glue down here. There's a little lip that these lenses set in. I suggest don't do that, because if you put glue down on this lip and you drop your lens in, glue is going to squish a little bit. And when it does, it's going to squish out underneath your lens. And that's going to piss you off, because whether it's CA glue, super glue, whatever type of glue, it's going to leave permanent marks on your lenses. The best way I've found to do this to minimize that is, let me clean off my fingerprints because we don't want a big old fingerprint on the inside of our lens. What I do is I'll hold my lens like this on both sides, and I take my glue and I'll turn it over, and if I could get that camera to focus up here, I squeeze it just a bit and get a little bitty glob to come out, and then I let go. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take just the wetted end and I'm just going to wipe it on two edges. The thing is you don't have to like massive glue your lenses in. All they need is just a little bit. Well, and I just dropped mine. There we go. Now put my finger on there and kind of move it around a little bit. And because I didn't have a bunch of glue all over, like gobbed on the edge of the lens when I dropped it, it was no big deal. I just picked it back up. And there we go. Lens is in. It's not going anywhere. And if you notice, other than the big nasty fingerprints on there, let me clean that off. We now have our lens in our scope. Now let's just turn it over. We're going to do the same thing, except we're going to try to skip the dropping part. So now I'm going to squeeze it to where there's just a little bubble on the outside, and I'm going to let it go back in. And I'm just going to wipe it on my edge. Because that's the thing about, especially the CA glue. Well, I did the one thing you shouldn't never do. You should never hold your glue facing your acrylic lens while you're trying to squeeze and get a little bit more out, because it coughed a bit on my lens, which pisses me off, but you know, hey. There we go. We're going to move it around just a little bit. Get what little tiny bit of glue that we got smeared around in there. All right, let me get my fingerprints off of there. And there we go. So there are lenses on there, nice and neat. So what we're going to want to do here, okay. If you notice, looking, excuse me, choke on my own spit there. One side is square and the other side has an angle cut to it. If you look, there's at this one, square angle cut. Now, just for reference, since you'll be painting this, you can do this one of two ways. But because you'll be painting, like gluing your scope together and painting it, or you can paint the two halves of the scope separate, paint your ring and stuff, put it, and then slide your ring on and then glue your scope together. But you can also just take your scope ring and pop it on. And of course, make sure you have it the right direction. And luckily I did, because I have the angle cut here and the angle cut here. And that's, you want the angle cut on the same sides. Now, what you're looking for, let me get this in. I got this fork on here already in the grip. What you're looking for is the two holes in the body here line up with the two center holes. So what we want to do is we want to lay this off to the side here. I'm going to try to keep this at an angle for you guys. I want to take this and I want to put this screw in right here and push it through. And now when you screw these in, they don't tighten down super tight. They just go through and barely thread into the other side. And we're going to do that up here too. Now, what I would suggest doing is, once you put this on and you're like, okay, I understand how it goes on and where I want everything, I would take it back off and put a little glue under this scope ring so that it attaches to here. The screws will hold it just fine, but you really want to just be careful, because you know your scope is something that's going to get hung on a lot of things, like when you're carrying it or when you have it slung. Get out here, Boogie. All right, so these other two just go in these front holes and they go all the way to the other side, to the other side hole. And they just lightly thread in. Be gentle, because you know they're not metal you're screwing into. But then again, after you get done with this, you can just put a tad bit of glue on the back side of the threads over here. There you go. So that is our scope assembled. And I'm going to tell you what, right now, that cut out about 13 and a half extra minutes of me fighting with trying to get my screw lined up, because when I pop this in and glue this in, it, like I said, it can shift a 0.5 millimeter either way, and dead center is the hole lined up. You go 0.5 millimeter this way, it's 0.5 millimeter off, this way 0.5 millimeter off. So this way it all lines it up nice and perfect. So what we're going to do now is we're going to jump back to the other part of the video, or the continuation of the video, where we're going to cover going ahead and getting the grip on and finalizing it. Real quick, before we glue this on, because now I'm working with an odd shape, easier to show you guys. We're going to take our other two pain in the butt flat blade screws, and they go in these upper holes right here. And then we are going to screw this dude together. And I can't hold it up and show you guys that well, because you have to stabilize so much whenever you're doing this. It's ridiculous. Hate flat blade screws. I hate them, I hate them, I hate them. All right, so now I'm going to put glue all around the inside of this square, okay? And I'm going to put some glue at the beginning of this edge right here and just a little bit of glue right there. So when I put that together, all those faces meet up. So now I'm just going to take my glue and go glob, glob, glob. A little bit there, a little bit there, a little bit there. Quite a bit back there. Spray that dude and push and hold it together. Okay. Get some of this stuff out of the way. I'm just holding it for a minute. Make sure all that gets time to cure quite nicely. And there we go. So, I mean, you can hold it. Here, let me move this camera up. You can hold it literally from the grip. It's sturdy as can be. Nice there. So, there we go. So I'm going to go through and I'm going to go ahead and put my orange tips on real quick because this one's not getting painted like some of the other ones that when I'm doing assembly, sometimes I'll go back and paint one up or something afterwards. So I don't always put these on, but you have to make sure you put these on. I don't want to hear it. I don't want to know about it. I don't want to be asked. It's your responsibility to make sure that you put your orange tips on your kit after you're done painting, because the law says that you have to if you're carrying something out in the open public, say to like a Comic-Con or something like that. I don't need to know cool little things that you can do to make sure that you can take them back off or any of that other stuff, because they need to be permanently affixed. That is my standing on it. That's where I'm at. No tips and tricks in the comments, please. So if we go back and we pull our latch, we can still put our cartridge in and lock that down. And like I said, you can get it to where you can pop that down. I think I wore this Mando rifle down enough to where yeah, I did. So you just pull, like if you keep going, you'll eventually wear the little corners right there that you'll wear these little corners down here, round them off a little bit. But pretty much overall, pop a chamber or a cartridge in. That's our cartridge. That's our spring-loaded trigger. We have our strap mount. There it is, completely done. We have our scope with only one lens in, because I'm going to be lazy right now, because this is going to go over in my stack of a bunch of kits that I have all over my studio. So if you have any questions, let me know. I appreciate it, guys. I hope you enjoyed this. I hope y'all have fun at your conventions. Leave me a like, leave me a comment, tell me to go get bent, whatever. But y'all have a good day. I appreciate it.